Man, Scream 6 is a banger. I had every feeling I was going to enjoy Scream 6 going into it. Even putting aside my personal fandom for the series and love of the genre, it's a franchise that continually turns out movies that have a consistently high quality to them. As I mentioned in my review of Scream 3 back during Wholesome Halloween 2, while that was clearly the series' weakest point, even at its lowest, the saga still had interesting things to say about films and the industry, and still wrapped that up in an entertaining slasher package that showed a clear respect for its characters. And that surprisingly continued even into the reboot/sequel territory of the, in my opinion, very underrated Scream 4, as well as its second comeback 11 years later with last year's Scream 5. It's really something worth pointing out, as not many slasher sagas can say that 5 movies deep they were continuing to hit the still good target. Even the cult icons that inspired this meta-slasher series, Jason, Freddy, Leatherface and Michael Myers, certainly can't make that claim, because my god did their stories have some stinky rest stops along the journey to their 5th film milestone. But not only did Scream clear this hurdle, but here we are now at number 6, and honestly, I don't know if this is a hot take, but Scream 6 is legit one of my absolute favourites in the whole franchise. To get you up to speed real quick, Scream 6 takes place 1 year after the Scream 5 Woodsboro killings. Sam and Tara Carpenter, our new series protagonists introduced in that 2022 outing and portrayed by Melissa Barrera and internet's current newest obsession Jenna Ortega respectively, have moved to New York with their fellow survivor friends to study at Blackmore University, far away from the location of their past trauma. Unfortunately, trauma seems to have followed them. Sam is psychologically struggling and seeking out professional help from a therapist who straight up just doesn't know what to do with her, and Tara is doing her best to move on, but in a manner that very much feels like she's incapable of addressing or even really acknowledging what they went through, lying about who she is and where she comes from to classmates, and refusing to accept any of her sister's protection. Without warning, a new Ghostface killer shows up in their lives, and thanks to a stolen driving license placed at the scene of one of the killer's brutal murders, as well as an unfriendly media presence surrounding Sam and a Reddit conspiracy theory that paints her as the true mastermind behind the recent Woodsboro massacre, Tara and Sam are persons of interest in the crime and unable to flee the city, leaving them and their friends stuck in the labyrinthine concrete jungle of Manhattan to be stalked by this vindictive murderer with an apparent grudge against Sam and a cult-like appreciation of those who've worn the mask before them. One thing that's always set the Scream franchise apart from its slasher peers is that while Freddy, Michael, Jason and the like were all one entity that spanned their slayings across multiple movie massacres, Ghostface isn't a character but rather a moniker. The central premise of the Scream formula that's always gave these movies a fun edge, besides its wink at the camera meta-commentary on the slasher tropes and conventions, is that it could be anyone behind the mask, and that whodunit mystery drives the narrative forward as much as the lead's efforts to survive does, adding an extra compelling hook to the on-screen violence. Scream 6 is one of the best examples of this mystery in action, adding in and bringing back so many characters that the potential suspect list is at an all-time high, constantly making the audience second-guess their assumptions through multiple twists and subversions that come at such a rapid pace that nothing ever feels completely certain, right up until that inevitable and much-anticipated final act mask removal. Normally with these things as well, you can often suffer from what you might call the Scooby-Doo effect. Introducing so many characters to add to the ever-increasing suspect list seems great on paper, as it creates more mystery, more possible killers, more potential for surprises, but all of that is meaningless if when the final reveal comes and the mask flies off, it's just Old Man Jenkins! You know, that one dude, he had that one line right at the start, you remember him? And the audience responds like, yeah, kinda? And this is an easier trap to fall into than you'd think. I remember when I first saw Scream 3, the moment the killer was revealed, being like, oh, it's that guy, and feeling completely underwhelmed. Even when they afterward tried to make the whole thing feel more impactful by giving him a twisty monologue filled with secret reveals that tried to give this milquetoast decision some more gravity. Thankfully though, Scream 6 totally avoids these pitfalls, deftly weaving engaging character arcs and relationships for all its cast between the killings in a way that not only makes us more invested in their survival, but also gives their potential betrayal far more weight should they end up being the ones holding the knife at the end. Everyone feels suitably fleshed out and interesting and a huge key part of the story. No one feels inconsequential or tacked on in an effort to just pad out the body count or suspect list. And it manages to do all this while still delivering on the black comedy, the fun meta commentary, and the trademark horror and violence the series is known for, without overstuffing what feels like a genuinely breezy 2-hour runtime. Everything feels so tight, in fact, that while at first I was a little trepidatious about the lack of Neve Campbell returning as Sydney in this one after her contract negotiations fell through, having now seen the film, I honestly don't know where she'd fit in without her screen time having to actively eat into or even replace someone whose presence in this movie feels necessary and important. I still would have loved to see her get the right paycheck offer, and I'd love to peek into the alternate universe where she's in the movie just to see how it turned out. If I had to guess without spoiling anything, I think her role would have most likely taken a lot of the stuff that another legacy character does. But either way, I'm at least happy to say that her lack of appearance here doesn't hurt the story they're trying to tell, and arguably even enhances it in firmly placing the newer Carpenter sisters as the current final girl faces of the franchise. Plus, I've also seen that apparently she really likes this movie despite her absence from it, so that's good to hear. She still shouldn't have been undervalued though. Stand by her on that one. Other highlights from the film include the vividly portrayed New York setting, which not only stands to give this entry its own unique identity, but is also utilised to the fullest in creating really great action set pieces that make use of the new location. Two of the biggest highlights of the movie, and the ones that were teased intensely in the trailers, is Ghostface's tense shotgun attack in the local bodega and the incredible subway scene, both of which I can confirm absolutely deliver, and mark some of the most tense highs the entire franchise has to offer. I recall a lot of folks being annoyed after we first saw a glimpse of the bodega scene that Ghostface had a gun, the concern being that they were taking the slash part out of the slasher concept, I think, and worried that this made the whole thing visually less scary and less in the spirit of the genre. But at the end of the day, it's just one scene, and Ghostface carrying a gun is, at least in my opinion, exactly the kind of thing this series should be doing. Scream as a franchise is always one that has had its fingers placed firmly on the pulse of not just what makes slashers tick, but the ways of the world that it resides in. It's always commented metatextually on not just film conventions, but equally on America's relationship with the media and violence. From Skeet Ulrich's iconic line delivery of "movies don't create psychos, movies make psychos more creative," to Scream 3's commentary on the abuses of actresses within the film industry, to Scream 4's discussion of the content culture of social media and internet fame. Introducing Scream to the concept of gun violence doesn't just feel natural, if anything it feels overdue. I'm surprised we didn't get the image of a Ghostface gun massacre in Scream 5, and as far as concerns go with it feeling less scary or fun, the filmmakers do well to treat the gun violence with a level of graphic realism that makes it just as scary and tense as anything else in the franchise, but manage to find that fine line where they don't go so far as to get a bit too real and take out the entertaining fun of the scene. The inclusion of the gun here is just as important, in my opinion, as the inclusion of Sam being on the receiving end of a Reddit internet conspiracy, complete with ridiculous fan art simping for her to murder people. Or the character Mindy's meta monologue about how they aren't just in reboot territory, but franchise territory, explaining how this puts them all at risk, from legacy characters to new additions. Or the subway on Halloween being full of people in Ghostface costumes in between all the other pop culture characters. Someone who, in this fictional universe, is both a movie franchise star and a real flesh and blood serial killer with copycat murderers and a high body count. This is just another symptom of the continuing ways in which Scream, as a franchise, conceptually analyzes our relationship with violence and media, and for me, it's an incredibly welcome addition. While we're on the subject of Ghostface and violence as well, this iteration's Ghostface is arguably the most intimidating and brutal the series has ever had, in a way that feels like it really raises the stakes and level of danger. While the Scream saga has definitely had its fair share of scares, tension, and creative kills that have always left the iconic masked murderer feeling like a more than capable antagonist, the more grounded routes the series goes for in making their killers just some random person in a mask have at times gone arguably a bit too far in that direction. Scream 3's Ghostface in particular often stumbles and fumbles so much through his attempted killings that it borders on physical comedy. Ghostface here though is genuinely menacing, There's a personality that comes out from behind the mask that suggests that whoever is doing these killings is actively relishing in the misery they're inflicting throughout. There's a scene early on with a ladder escape where the killer really takes their time in wandering over to their would-be victim, slams their knife down in the windowsill with theatricality before grabbing the feet of the ladder in a purposefully frantic manner and really toying with them. When they finish with a kill, they make sure to let their next target see them swiftly clean their blade while they stare into their eyes as if to say, "You're next, I'm getting this ready for you." It's all really effectively chilling. The kills are way more brutal and personal this time too. This Ghostface doesn't just stab, they gut, twisting and tearing with their knife while they bask in their victim's pain, engaging in a level of graphic violence the series has never really had before. It all serves to put some of the scary back into the slasher that they've honestly quite long been missing. When the trailers emphasise that line exchange between the killer and Gale where Ghostface says, "There's never been one quite like me," I figured it was just generic sequel, bigger and better fluff dialogue to convince people there was a reason that this one was going to be scarier than the last. But it turns out it was kind of a true statement. I really don't think there has been a Ghostface like the one in this film. And it's not just Ghostface who performs well here, everyone knocks it out of the park. All of the actors give engaging, sympathetic performances, everyone has great chemistry together, the new characters fit seamlessly with the old without missing a beat, and the stories and relationships that tie them all together are often genuinely quite human and touching. These people aren't just the cannon fodder archetypes of slashers of old, but really fleshed out beings with motivations and fears and goals and baggage. It's great. No one feels static, everyone feels like they're evolving. I love how smart everyone feels, like they're battle hardened from all the previous times they've had to go through this kind of thing. I know it's a bit cliche to point out how dumb characters in horror movies can be, and while I don't think this criticism is often used all that fairly, as you really can't expect characters in a narrative to be aware of the genre they are in, I still gotta say it does feel genuinely refreshing when characters actively make great decisions and still fall victim to trouble anyway. When Ghostface first appears in New York and makes their first attack on the Carpenter sisters, immediately the two of them are like, "Okay, cool, let's skip town." Like, none of this, "No, I won't keep running, this is my life, this is where I live." They're both just like, "Nah, let's just get the hell out of Dodge," and resent the fact that the police are keeping them here. The ways in which they attempt to catch or defeat Ghostface are clever and actively acknowledge learning from past occurrences, and on the flip side, the way Ghostface expects them to have learned from these occurrences and so flips the script and changes from the usual approach to undermine these smart decisions is just as clever and makes for a super engaging game of cat and mouse that not only acknowledges its own legacy, but often subverts it in fresh and interesting new ways. Extremely minor spoilers here, but there's a borderline genius moment where Gale Weathers hangs up on Ghostface and hits redial in order to hear where the phone is calling from, and like, wow, that's so simple and so smart. And yet, I wouldn't even thought to do that as an audience member with all the power to easily armchair critique these characters' decisions from the stake-free safety of my comfy cinema seat. It's just an absolute banger from start to finish. A smart, funny, subversive slasher that seamlessly interweaves fan service and its own legacy into a refreshing new and engaging direction and setting. This movie is an absolutely standout slasher sequel in a series of standout slasher sequels. Like I said, I expected to enjoy it, but I thought I'd have a great time with it the way I had a great time with 5. I'd go to the cinema, have a blast, leave happy, but besides a couple of standout moments, not really feel much of a need to discuss or revisit the film afterwards. But my partner and I literally haven't shut up about Scream 6 since we saw it this past weekend. Every time we think about it, there's another little clever thing we can assess or appreciate. And listen, after Wholesome Halloween 2, it's probably no secret that I could be considered a bit of a slasher guy. And on that note, let me recommend this as some of the most fun you can have in that genre. But I don't just want to recommend it as a slasher fan. I don't just want to recommend it as a horror fan. I don't even want to recommend it specifically as a Scream fan, although it will absolutely satisfy the appetites of all those coming from those perspectives. I want to recommend it though as just a damn good film. It's funny, it's tense, it's emotional, it's filled with great throwbacks, it's full of great subversions, it's got great characters, great chemistry, great set pieces, great action, great kills, a great antagonist, a great mystery. It's just great. And I'm going to say it, and I don't care if people get mad at me, as they often do when you make statements like this on the internet. I honestly think it's probably my second favourite Scream movie, trumped only by the original. Yes, I like it better than Scream 2, don't at me. And on that potential bombshell, that's all from me today. Apologies for the irregular schedule lately, between working 2 jobs and applying for a third, personal life issues, preparing for a big trip to LA at the end of the month, beginning to gear up for this year's big YouTube project, and getting a gorgeous, stunning, wonderful new puppy. I've had my hands, unfortunately, pretty damn full and not had much time to just do the odd video here and there. I hope you all understand. But I assure you, big things are on the way and have even started being written. It's just squeezing in stuff like this is a little harder to do. I'm going to be honest, besides a Patreon exclusive video I've been meaning to do for ages that's already written, and that I'm going to try my very hardest to squeeze in before I fly out, I'm probably not going to upload for a little while again, but I do hope to really get back in the swing of things once I get back from LA. Especially since I'll have heard back from that other potential job by that point, so I'll have a better idea of what's going on there. My little Howley boy is now settled right in with us and is growing out of his young puppy phase, so he's getting a lot easier to manage. And I won't have a whole big vacation to pack, prepare for, and do. So if you don't want to miss any of that when I get back, be sure to subscribe to my OnlyDans at the red button below and hit the bell so you don't miss it. And if you want to support the channel and make it so that it's easier to warrant prioritizing this stuff over other work, then you can subscribe to my premium OnlyDans on Patreon, which comes with a bunch of bonuses as well as other upcoming stuff that'll only go out on there. Link in the description for more information. Other than that, I guess just like the video if you enjoyed it, and please feel free to comment with your thoughts on Scream 6. Is it just me, or is it genuinely a really high point in the franchise? Is it actually not that hot to take that it's good enough to be my second favourite? Or do you think I'm being an absolute lunatic with that preference? Let me know. I haven't really looked into how people are reacting to this one, so I might be all alone in this assessment, but I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you all when I get back from my travels.